Asian shares were higher from the close to two-year lows hit in the previous session. This as investors took comfort in signs of lower domestic COVID-19 infections. Chinese blue chips rose around 1.4% after Shanghai officials saying half of the city had achieved zero COVID status, and after US President Joe Biden saying he was considering eliminating Trump-era tariffs on China. Chinese data released on Wednesday also showed consumer prices gained 2.1% from a year earlier. That's above expectations and the fastest pace in 5 months, partly due to food prices. In Japan, the Nikkei gaining 0.2%, the Hang Seng climbing 1%, and the Shanghai Composite Index advancing 0.8%. To Wall Street now, where the S&P 500 and Nasdaq ended higher on Tuesday, with big growth shares rising after the previous day's sell-off as Treasury yields eased. The day's trading was choppy, with major indexes moving between gains and losses as investors were nervous ahead of today's release of US Consumer Price Index data. The S&P 500 gained 0.24%, the Nasdaq Composite gained 0.98%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 0.26%. European shares extended their bounce on Wednesday, and bond yields held below recent peaks ahead of that inflation data we spoke about in the US. That will offer a guide to how aggressively the Fed will raise rates. Let's take a look at the rest of the markets. Right, let's get some more on the markets. I'm joined by Carmen Belwiner. She's a portfolio manager at ABSA Asset Management. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News this afternoon. So choppy trading on Wall Street yesterday. We're waiting for the release of that inflation data. What else is happening on that side?
So I think today's focus is definitely going to be on the US inflation numbers. And then off the back of the announcement out of Shanghai that COVID numbers are coming down. So the prospect is that we're looking for a easing of lockdown restrictions in China, which will assist obviously on their side as well. So that's been the significant tailwind for the day across the globe.
Okay. And we saw Asian shares trading higher, obviously coming from that very low base. What else is happening in their markets besides the issue of COVID that you've just raised?
Yeah, I think, despite the inflation numbers that came out, this has largely been driven by an improvement in sentiment that the market will reopen in the next few weeks. And in so doing, we saw the big tech stocks rally, Tencent up as much as 6% yesterday and then close up 2.7%. So that obviously has fed through into the JSE, where we see Naspers and Prosus up over 7% each.
All right, so we saw the JSE closing in the green yesterday, I think driven by finance stocks, among other things. What's happening on the markets today here at home?
Yeah, as I've mentioned, it's definitely the US inflation numbers that is key. The Rand has strengthened into today as well. But I think a lot of the sentiment today is around relief, number one, and positive sentiment around these inflation numbers that we expect to come off marginally.
Okay, so when we're taking a look at company news now, we saw gold mining companies falling about 3 to 4%. Anglo Gold Ashanti, Harmony Gold Mining, Goldfields and DRD Gold. What's happening there?
So largely been driven by a strengthening dollar, number one. And what that has led to is a reduction in the sentiment around gold being seen as a safe haven. So that has definitely been a key. And then also because China's been in such significant lockdown and it being one of the largest purchasers of gold, we've seen a significant reduction in the demand there. And that has had an impact on the gold price and then obviously the read-through to the gold miners as well.
We're seeing in South Africa a lot of labour issues coming to the fore. One such is NUMSA striking at ArcelorMittal. Just talk to me about if that's affecting their share price in any way.
So not today. The strike did start today after they'd announced it yesterday. And we see ArcelorMittal up almost 3%. for today. And I think a lot of the noise is around whether we should see an increase of what Oslo is offering of 5%, which is in line with the Reserve Bank's forecast for inflation for 2022, versus the union's demand for at least 10% increase in wage. I don't think this is unusual for us. We see this quite often in the mining market in South Africa. So hence the positive reaction, which is basically just washed off the imminent strike.
All right, Standard Bank announcing a new chair, the first black woman to hold that position as well. Nkululeko Nyembezi. Any reaction from the market to that?
Not much reaction. I think more so that is a good thing. It means that the market is happy with the appointment. She's obviously been on the board since I think it's January 2020. So not new to the board by any measure. And obviously a seasoned director as well, having had high profile positions before. So Standard Bank is marginally up today, but yeah, that has not too much of a reaction based on the announcement.
All right, now this is quite a throwback. If you're around my age, you've been you've been around for a while. Apple announcing that they're no longer making the iPod. And quite a lot of news coming out around that. I know that's not really going to move the price off Apple, but just tell us what's happening with that stock.
Yeah, I will say that I am shocked that iPods were still around. I did not know that. Having said that, it's been around for 20 years, but I think it's been overtaken by your general cell phone. It had gotten to a point where it was closely aligned in terms of functionality with the iPhone. And so it's most probably become obsolete now and unlikely to have been contributing much to Apple's performance. Apple has been up over 300% over the last 5 years, and that definitely did not come from iPod sales. So, as you said, it's more sentimental factor than a market moving factor.
Carmen Belwane, Portfolio Manager at ABSA Asset Management. Thanks so much for your time.